Good evening, this is Alex with the Commodity Matrix. We're going to review our select commodities. This is my standard intro, my X account, CBOTman33 is my handle. Of course, for those that you're aware, I am switching everything over to another X account and another YouTube account. Not here or there, you'll see links accordingly. One other housekeeping measure, here is my tools that I'm selling on Gumroad. This is the Square of Nine calculator. This is the range square calculator, both Excel products. And this is my online lessons, now called the Master Manual, if you're interested. Helps kind of support this channel. All right, so let's get into the actual matrix here. Again, we just finished with the solar eclipse. So pretty important time zone, hence why I'm doing this video. This one goes back to September, is where I started this data. Again, because I sped it up. I went to the crescent waxing waning moons and from the quarter moons, right? I needed something a little faster. Now, if I have to, I can slow it back down. Not simple, but it definitely can be done. Anyway, what I set up here, this is the previous solar eclipse, right? The one back in February. This is our current solar eclipse, one that we just had on the 12th. Now, you can see I have a line drawn in here from solar to solar that will extend out into the future to the next solar. This one I'd have to change some stuff, but you can see the speed of the incline right now. Again, why it works, I don't know, but you can see that the parallel trend lines off of this, it hit this low. Well, I put it on that low, hit this low, almost hit this low, right? So again, the market was telling you, it always guides you where the direction is, and this one is pretty interesting. So again, it kind of gave you a clue maybe of where it was going to go. Again, the yellows are halfway. These are quarter to three-quarter, the gray, green, and then, of course, the eclipses. Now, the next eclipse is the lunar eclipse, which is in the full moon cycle, which is about 11 market days or 11 calendar days or whatever it is. It's, again, everything is measured. So that's what I like about the moons. Anyway, you can see the solar eclipse I've marked. This is the previous, our current zone. We kind of had an inside lower close following the eclipse. Here is the squaring of this range. Now we did take it out by a click, but again, it's still kind of important, which kind of one period before the lunar eclipse. So I kind of like all that, of course. And of course, this is your cardinal cross area, which it didn't quite get down to, which is a more friendly sign. Time zone wise, it missed it by 1 bar, right? So this is the 1-to-1 going up, the 1-to-1 going down, which again, since it didn't work, it makes a little sense. For time, I missed it by 1 bar because we made a new high, right? So that's kind of interesting. Now here's the wheat. You can see that the solar eclipse close is now here. The previous one is down here. So this is more speedy than the corn and actually the beans and meal and oil. So the wheat, if you follow the trend, right, you're kind of more interested in the wheat. And it kind of, the parallels weren't as active. So again, that's interesting on its own merits. Don't know what to quite make of that, but the wheat's, again, it's being held back. Worst crop since 1956 here in Kansas, and we were going through some major league drought now. Here's the beans. Now again, that doesn't mean you just buy it, right? That's buyer beware mentality. When you hear news like that, you should have probably been selling it. Right, no different than the talk of silver being at 400. That's when you started selling silver. No different here when you start talking and hearing about all the problems out in the wheat country. Here's the beans. Now again, it's a little slower in its direction, right? If we can get up here, my systematic approach, the stops will get moved, well, 1 notch above it here, right here, if we get some X's up here. So now the solar eclipse is kind of a dud, really. We did make a high prior, so again, just common logic, that was 6 bars from the high 4 bars or 4 crescent moons, right, between the high and the low. So then you go back up 4 bars or 4 moons, and it puts you into this time zone. So that balance or squares it out, if in a sense. Pretty interesting. Now the forecast, since you can see this one will be for if nothing fundamentally changes much, that's the forecast into the next solar, which is February 6th of 2027. So kind of a dud, right? Inside the range, really nothingness. Now I don't have to, right? But that gives you an indication. And there too, you kind of look at again, it's just parallel, right? It was telling you the speed direction And again, if you're a bear and you're looking for a place to get out of your bearish trades, this parallel, oops, I'm not on it. This parallel channel down in here somewhere into the lunar makes a lot of sense if you're a bear. All right, let me put this back. Anything else? We got a little Gann zone here in the middle of the end of the quarter moon. Nothing else much to talk about. Soybeans are really interesting, but kind of a dead horse right now. This is the meal. Again, beans will not go up until the meal starts skyrocketing a little bit. It had its chance and then it fizzled, right? So now it does have an X here, but closed like crap. Actually, the stops will get moved up to here since we had a little reaction. So still got in here, basically a break-even trade. And again, pretty dud. Now the squaring of the range from the low, this low and this low, right? There's two of them, just to kind of see how they did. Missed the low by a few, but it caught the big acceleration. This square goes kind of in no man's land, kind of the same deal, kind of the accelerational up phase. So lunar eclipse, I have no idea. I mean, I'm kind of friendly above the close of the eclipse, and I'm a little bearish below it. But obviously this is the support, right? It's between the two eclipse zones. So we've already been down there. So again, you got to assume that's your buying dip. Or again, you can see the cardinal cross here. That's coming in either now or this next week for time and price, right? So again, if you're wanting to buy a dip somewhere in here, makes a little sense. 313-ish. Here's bean oil, the bull that was following the crude until it didn't. Again, it's a small portion of the bean products. That's why the beans won't go. It'll go up some, but it won't follow the bull up like meal would. Meal actually controls the beans, and margins are about the same price, so kind of gives you a hint. Now here's the one-to-one coming down off the highs, squaring out of the range on timing. So interesting period. That is September 11th, 911. So again, that's a little bit down the road. We'll see. It's pretty important. Probably Wednesday's close or Wednesday's trade. If we start making new highs Wednesday, I don't like it when it makes it on Monday, right? It's just kind of my trading mentality. I don't like that too much. But if we could start pushing out this solar eclipse range, I'm kind of friendly that chart a little bit. Makes sense, right? We've had a decent decline. Again, I don't know any of the fundamentals anymore about bean oil. Since I'm out of the business, doesn't really matter, right? It is what it is. Well, here is the cattle. Again, you can see the solar eclipse, the previous one back in September, and the one in February kind of projected these highs. Now, from close to close, it didn't. We spun and changed the fundamentals. I actually have a double top on my chart. Stops did get moved down a little bit from the highs. So, I don't know. It looks pretty heavy. Something's different, right? This double top, you just don't see that very often. Even if you sold it here, anywhere in here, right? You've got a pretty good lead on the market. Now, hedgers should have been hedging that. If you're not hedging 250 cattle, then you have a skewed, even listening too much to the fake news. Again, don't listen to them. Look at the chart. It'll tell you. So anyway, yeah, going to be an interesting trade. We're coming into the fast zone. I think Gann used to call that what was it on the Gann wheel? Can't remember. Anyway, here's cough. Again, you can see it's had a wild ride, typical coffee. Again, had a 30-gram pop, and now we're in a big-ass chop. So solar eclipse is right in the middle of it. I don't see anything parallel off this. Again, this is the projection line that goes out to the next eclipse. Basically, the highs are pretty much good. I mean, based on that, squaring of the range zone comes in pretty close to the 3/4. Again, the cardinal cross is going to be pretty active. But what do you do? You're guessing if you're a buyer or a seller, so nothing much you can do there. Here's the cotton. I got some missing data. Kind of closed on its highs on the eclipse, which I do not like. That always concerns me. Now it has to prove it. If you want tighter stops, I think you could definitely put them underneath here. 81.57 is that number on the square of 9. I don't know. I mean, probably 81.30 or something, right? Something weird. If you're tight stops, now my stops will be right here. I'll adjust them up here when I'm done, but 78. And we did square out the range on the solar eclipse, so it was a whammy. And so far, it's held together. It hasn't had some big collapse yet. This week will tell the tale, probably, if we're continuing the bull trend. kind of resembles the bean oil in a sense, this correction zone. Again, here's squaring of the range. You'll miss the highs by 1 notch. So the square and the cardinal cross, right, held the market. And the timing of a cardinal cross was pretty active too on the 3/4. Now let's move on to sugar. Again, actually turned into a bull. I kind of like that. I kind of upset with myself. I didn't buy that. Got caught up in some other stuff. But the 3/4 zone, I was pretty pumped when I seen the reaction after that. Had a reversal close, hit the, penetrated, took out everything. I love bear traps, you know me. So it was definitely a bear trap with a higher close and higher follow through. It was a green light, go. It came back to that area where it broke out of. Technically, that's pretty bullish. And the higher close Friday was definitely not weak either. So now you can see this is the old highs, right? Let me go back. I don't know why they're way up there, but this is definitely a zone to be careful of. Just willy-nilly buying it. I don't like buying strength unless there's a reason or a report maybe. Here's the orange juice. Again, one of the bearish ones we had after the biggest bull in history of mankind, back 2024, 2025, and now it's doing the bear market dance, right? Pretty typical. And these are all projections. I was running projections from close to close. It hit it pretty accurately. So from the close to close to close, gave it a good projection, which, do you sell that now or buy it? I don't know. I have a hard time buying that, but now maybe you buy a dip and knock out lows. I like the traps. You know me. I kind of had a trap here, so I expect traps all the way. And if we do have a trap, I would expect a trap up here somewhere on the recovery if we do that. Here's the crude, and you can see there's the projection, which is around 106. Now that is up there in the near the highs, 112 or whatever it was the high. Now this is crude 1, which is actually a quarter speed. This is a half speed, so it looks totally different. Let me get these lined up so you can kind of see the difference in the speed by just 1/4. Okay, that's close enough. So here's the quarter, here's the half, and you can see how different it changes it. Now the good news is you can see it easier. The bad news is you're risking more here. Now you have less trades though. That's the trade-off for guys paying a lot of commission. You want it maybe a tidge slower. I'm keeping them both in case it gets quiet. I think this one might be a little too speedy. Anyway, here's the close to close to close. And again, we can just see how it did. Kind of check things out. Kind of, hit some of these lows. And it was a parallel to the high. So this is pretty accurate. Again, knowing that highs, I was projecting this up into there, right? So anyway, from the solar eclipse close, right, here's the solar eclipse. I was pretty comfortable with that projection. Stops got moved down. I guess I'm long. Wonder why I must have flipped it. Well, anyway, stop should be here. Sorry, must have deleted it. Now this was the forecast from the close to close from the September 1 to February eclipses. So it was flat. So we're coming kind of back close to it, right? So it makes a little sense. That support, if you're wanting to buy a dip or need to hedge, long hedges, right? You're looking for somewhere to maybe start buying in. This is not a bad area. 2 eclipses. Now, one caveat on all these is this solar to solar was the shortest one I can recall. It was on the crescent waxing waning. It was only 40 periods, where normally it's 48. So it'll be interesting if we have 8 periods where these closes would be right now, where it normally would be. Again, I don't know. Here's 8 periods right there. So it's possible that everything, all the forecasts could be a little off based on the eclipses close to close. Now again, that's 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 7 might hit their close to close to close forecast. So it's not super accurate anyway, but it gives you a pretty good idea. And then you run parallels off of it, right, with this trend line you create. Now this is the current close to close forecast, the one we looked at, basically getting up back up in here, right? So makes sense a little bit if we have some trigger pop. We know though that the solar eclipse sequence, which is the solar lunar or sometimes lunar solar sequence, is volatility will pick up. So I expect some action. You have a lot of war activity on the darkness of the solar eclipse. So another thing to watch out for. Now here's the natural gas. This one actually worked real well. So I went ahead and run it off of the whole range of the solar eclipse back in September 21. Here was the solar eclipse sequence closed nearly, and then this one was in that range, right? So again, the range, which is paralleling it down, it forecasted it really well. Still kind of slow, kind of almost like the cryptocurrency break, just kind of more methodical. Stops I like back above the solar eclipse. Knowing that gas, it'll probably trigger out lows, just that's how it trades, and kind of preparation for the winter cold weather that'll soon be approaching us, and people will start buying it for hedges, right? These companies and whatnot. Texas last year was the high because of the cold weather snap. Now here's the S&P, the bull, and you can see the projections are bullish. Here's the close. I couldn't run it any further because I'm gonna have to add some data, Square of 9 data, right, to keep it going. Again, I hate buying that. I just can't buy it. I would have to wait for a dip. Just my nature. I just cannot buy strength into the clip zones. It's proven to me not to be worthy. Whoops. Over the decades of trading it now, actually 30 years, I think, or more, I've been trading the eclipses. Just let somebody else have this trade, unless you just have to be in there. Well, then use options. And if you're a bear, man, that's a tough one to be bearish on. It's protected by every governmental agency out there. So, use your caution being a bear. Use puts because they're probably cheap. If you have specific stocks in mind, just use their puts there because they're, again, probably pretty cheap. Here's the gold, and you can see I got a lot of lines drawn in here. These are all projections, right, that I drew in to try to see where the close is going to be. And this one was close to close, which is projecting, right, the market down into the next eclipse, which is inside the range. So again, more of a chopper probably. And all these other ones are projecting, which I'm going to delete here. This one. So yeah, a pretty interesting little trade. It had a great pop, pretty logical, right? This was a nice little carved out bottom. Kind of got out of the news a little bit. All the 1 ounce traders kind of quit pumping it up, and then it could finally go up. You get them all going, talking the same data. It has a hard time rallying. Here's the silver. Let me just take a quick look. I want to see where halfway. Now halfway on a square 9 chart is different than a halfway. There is 49 by 49 right there. So there's, of course, that red line coming down right in the intersection is, we'll just call it 50 for easy math. So 25 back up will be your halfway right here, approximately. All right, that's your halfway point on the square of 9. A little different than a 50% retracement, just so you know. It can be the same, but typically it's not. Mathematics don't gel. Now you still have some pretty bullish people. Fundamentally, it's probably a little better now since it had the correction, dropped halfway. Well, gold didn't, but silver definitely did. Let's check out the silver. Now here's silver 1 and silver 2, same situation. This was quarter speed, pretty fast, and it was off the screen. So I went to half speed, and it definitely slowed it down. Now this is the projection zone right in here into the next eclipse. So again, basically inside this range. So it could do anything it wants to. Kind of resistance right here. This was one of the forecasts I did off high to high into the solar eclipse, right? So that did project that. It worked real well. That's how I do things, right? I'm looking for an edge. Now here is your solar eclipse to solar eclipse projection. It's not really a cardinal cross, but it definitely, or this was the 1-to-1 coming down. This was the solar close. It did project this high pretty good price wise. This was the cardinal cross, right? 1-to-1 cardinal cross, and it also did its job. Kind of came in beforehand, but so yeah, nice looking bottom. I like the trap. So what do we know? It had a bear trap, so now I'm looking for some type of bull trap. Probably up here makes sense. That $90 mark. That's if we don't cave in here or something. Here's the squaring of the range from the high. Pretty key, right? This is a big one. Keep this date in mind. It happens to fall in the lunar eclipse, which gives me a little excitement in my bones. August 27th. Now the lunar comes in at 1:29 p.m., so right on the close of the futures, which is pretty interesting. Now they close at 1:30 on the futures, and then keep trading to 4. So that's your Globex, right? Anyway, let me see. Yeah, that's on a Thursday. Here's Bitcoin. Here's your projections, similar to a lot of these other ones, right? Not just Bitcoin, but also silver and gold. And so they're all kind of doing the same thing. Speed-wise, right? They're staying within the ranges, which I find pretty fascinating. So eclipse close to close. You can kind of see parallel kind of working there a little bit. Let me see. And if you're a bull but wanting to take profits kind of deal, depending on where, let's say, assume it's up here somewhere, right? This is the zone where I would be, if it's either the lunar eclipse high or the quarter. This is if you're just bullish and you're just taking some light profits, this would be an area. Now, if you're semi-bull, maybe even smidge bearish, you don't go that high. This is the previous solar eclipse, right? This is the range zone that you trade in, and you can see it's already been active. So that's kind of my opinion on that. Here is this is the actual quarter moon, what I used to trade. Again, let me get it lined up so you can kind of see the difference. Good enough. So again, if there's 50 in here on this one, it'll be 25, right? Again, I do everything in mathematics. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, right? Keep everything mathematical. That's why I do here. This price zone on Bitcoin 2 is 16 squares, odd and even squares. The Bitcoin 1 is 8, right? So again, the difference between this square and this square is 8. This one is 16. Again, keep it mathematical. Not much to say about this. It's a dog with fleas. Maybe might be one to maybe bow out for a little bit. Ripple did make a new low. Just not too enthused. I'm kind of really wanting to get out. I did buy a little Ripple on this previous trap back here. Now we made another one. Just not a fan of that. But I have a hard time getting out between now and the lunar. Here is your solar eclipse projection line. So if we start trading down on that, definitely the more negative out of the 6 cryptos I have, it's down here a lot lower percentage-wise, 63. So that's almost in half from the previous solar. So it's, again, a lot more heavy. And this one projects down 67 also. 60. Here's Ethereum. Again, another one that I added to my 6-pack of cryptos. Again, you can see this is an exact rally, right? And it's kind of feeling a little heavy all of a sudden. Stops really could be pushed up. We didn't have enough data to get us an X up here. Again, we had a 1-0. So in theory, if I'm nervous, I'm going to definitely put a stop here. We bought it here, right? So it's a small loser, which is fine. Here's Sol. Solanta, here we got this one. You can see the squaring out of the range comes in here. This is from the highs. So again, we're pretty active coming up after we get through the lunar. We did have a little pop up, so the stops at least could be moved up here. Again, one of those that the projection zones, just like gold and silver, are within the money swings of the low. Here's Litecoin. Again, projections, you can see it here. Actually a little lower, so again, a little more heavy than Bitcoin and Sol. But again, you can see all the squaring out coming up. We're actually into one right now. I believe that's from the high. Let me double check. Yeah, that's from that high back in October of 2025. Don't know if that's the all-time high or not, but we're squaring that out right in here. Again, if you're a picker, I would put a buy stop in more than, let it prove it to you. And if you don't like doing that, then if you can do options, maybe. Our stops are here. It's just a putrid heavy rounding thing. So I'm not a fan of adding to losers on these trades. Stacking 1-ounce bars is a lot different than stacking Litecoin. Here is DOGE. I don't know why I added this one, but everybody kind of likes it, trading it. So just a slow drag down. So again, squaring out with the solar. Stops are here, makes sense. 1-to-1 squaring out, kind of missed it by a tick or 1 bar. Here's solar eclipse close. The solar eclipse lows is a little more ugly. It's down there at around 50. So we're at 70. I don't know what percentage that is, but it's heavy. Okay, I am going to sign off. Thanks again. This is Alex with the Commodity Matrix. And give me a thumbs up if you would. I would appreciate it. Need some help in the like department. And subscribe, for Christ's sakes.